This program is recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP LP 101.9 FM.
Community Television and the Chippewa Valley Sustainable Future Festival presents Do-It-Yourself Solar Power Installation.
I want to thank everybody for coming this morning. Big crowd. A year from last Christmas time, we finished putting in our own residential solar PV, and I've done a PowerPoint summary here on that process. So for those of you who are thinking of doing this yourself, I may encourage you or I may discourage you by the time we're done with this. I tried to put all the details in here, and so we'll see how it goes. That's me sitting at the top of 8 of the 26 panels, the ones we put in the garden shed. So we'll start out. I've put these steps together. This tends to be a pretty methodical presentation. Okay, these are the steps we went through in this order. Don't mix these up because you'll run into trouble if you do, and I can verify that. So step number 1 was to study the details, and I have here 3 publications of many which are helpful to figure out how these things work if you're not familiar with them already. And there are many other things that are out there too. The Renewable Energy Handbook is an old classic. It's been around forever. DIY solar projects I picked up out at Menards. It was just, I saw it and I thumbed through it and I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. So I grabbed that one. And I don't like idiot's guides, but if you can tolerate them, that one seemed to be relatively good for beginning information. But you're going to get into it a lot deeper than that one and the one above it. Online and suppliers information, do a lot of web work looking at what equipment's out there and how it works, and most people who supply the equipment also have excellent educational information on their websites. Usually encourage you, of course, to buy from them, but the information really is pretty good and pretty complete, especially if you go through 3 or 4 different major suppliers' websites. Read actual project summaries. I've got mine up here actually, and talk with area residents, that could be me, who have completed, approved, and successful projects. And to date, I will have to say ours has turned it on and haven't really done anything to it since then except for the replacement of one piece of equipment that failed. But that's not atypical. In fact, it's usually you get 1 or 2 of this particular part of the system failing. List your electric needs and use history. The reducing your use of electricity is one of the big ones. This is the cheapest electricity you can generate is electricity you don't use. And that almost everybody says that immediately in any of these publications. It's what you don't use that'll save you the most money and then make the system that you need smaller and save you money there too. So it's kind of a double savings, and it's so important to emphasize that. And we did a lot of things around our house in terms of cutting down our energy uses more on the heating level than anything else. Energy assessment, whoever's doing those nowadays, we had ours done through Focus on Energy. Before this was done, all of these things are important. They save you on rebates sometimes. The current programs don't work that way now. Study and consider other systems. Solar hot water is a particularly good, high payoff system to think about putting into. But again, on that, this presentation doesn't cover that, but you have to watch out because the range of those systems go from $1,000 to $10,000, and for similar systems depending on who's doing it and where the equipment's coming from. Okay, some of the obvious things. Number 2, check your property. Just kind of walk around. You need clear south-facing exposure for solar electric. There isn't an exception to that. You just simply have to have it. And I put down here, look south. And then 90 degrees east and west, what's on the sides too. It's not just the south, but it's also trees and buildings, other obstructions to the right and left of you as you face south. Where are you going to think you might put a solar install? Is it going to be on the roof of a building? Is it going to be a freestanding array someplace out in the yard? Both of these are possibilities, but just start to kind of put this together and get an idea in your mind, specifically what's going to work best. Or what a variety of possibilities would be. Think 365 days. Remember, the leaves come out in the trees in the summer, and that creates a problem that might not be there so strongly in the winter. Also, remember that this is a northern climate, and you get a lot of snow in the winter, and you're going to have a lot of snow load. We also get some downburst winds sometimes, which will be in the 50, 60, 70 mile an hour range. Highest recorded winds in the area, I believe, are 90 miles an hour, and your system should be able to sustain, structurally sustain a 90 mile an hour wind burst. And if it doesn't, you could get into trouble. Think of animals and trees as well. We'll get to the animals here again in a minute. Check with the neighbors. Lots of times people just are against this for some reason, but always calm the waters first. Go around, talk to the neighbors, say, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think about this? Would it be okay? Would you mind? And they'll usually say, go ahead. But then you might get somebody who says, I don't want that terrible looking thing up there. So then you'll have to calm them down, some diplomacy, some baked goods or something. And your insurance agent, you're going to put some expensive equipment up. Make sure that when it's installed, it doesn't void some part of your insurance policy, or that you do have some coverage on it in case it were to be damaged. Draw up plan number 1. Explore the possibilities. Check your property setbacks. How far away from the borders with your neighboring lots does something need to be? Think about grid tied or off-grid or hybrid. I would strongly suggest, unless you're in a place where you don't have access to electricity, to go grid tied for many, many, many reasons, very important reasons. We'll get back to that. Get a basic idea of what kind of equipment you're going to need to put the system in. And again, a lot of browsing websites is really helpful to look at the equipment that's out there. What does it cost? Where might it come from? Who supplies the materials? Don't forget the shipping costs. We looked for good prices on things locally, that is within the state of Wisconsin. We couldn't come up with a good supplier that was competitive with other suppliers around the country. So I will admit that we bought our stuff from California, where we found that, by far and away the best prices. And it's the sort of thing I would pay more to buy something close or something local that we just really couldn't come up with comparables. And perhaps that's my failing too, but I did look, just didn't find the suppliers, even regionally. California was hard to beat. Look for incentives, all part of the planning. And I put up some nice little logos here. My even Bucky Badger, and then a real badger down here next to Bucky Badger. How realistic a picture is that? Well, anyway. Excel Energy is our electrical supplier. They're excellent to work with. Make contacts with these people eventually. What's net metering? What are your tax incentives? State and federal rebate programs, power company, and Focus on Energy, which came through for us at the last minute on this project. Now, what can you realistically do yourself? A lot of times people think, well, I've hung a picture on a wall, or I've done some trim on the doors inside, or I helped my friend put in a basement, or I've done some frame construction. Think about this really seriously, because you've got to get it right. It's not something where you're going to be helping somebody else. I mean, if you're in command, you're doing this yourself, you better have access to a very close relative or very dependable somebody who can help you out on these things. And that includes basic construction techniques, materials, definitely electrician. You must either have experience to the level, at least some level of being an electrician, or know somebody who can supply that skill for you, because you can't screw up the electric part of it. Fully consider safety requirements. You notice I chose some photos here. Everybody's on a safety line up here on the roof. And I personally know of people who've fallen off of roofs of houses, some of them with very serious injuries. You're going to have a friend or a neighbor help you with this. What are your liability concerns if that person suddenly loses their balance and rolls off the roof? These are really very serious things to think about. And I'll show you something my cousin pointed out to me, who helped me with this project, in a minute here. Project scheduling. What time of year are you going to be installing? This is one of my very favorite photographs. This is my cousin Scott, who was my helper on this project. He's a guy I grew up with. He's like my brother down in Illinois. We're both a couple farm kids. And this is putting up the 6 panels at the end of a garage, and you can see it collecting snow as you go across. And it's a nice little time story, like, okay, how long ago was this one put up? This is the last one, obviously, and this is the first one. This is at night in December, and as the snow is starting to fall. We're putting up these 6 panels, and we got it done. And down here is the project in process again with snow on the ground. And I put out a few notes that you've probably already read already. Remember, April install means January 1 start of planning, and you better be quick about the planning because you don't want things to run on too long there. Initial contacts with your electric power company, next one. Excel or Co-op or some other power company. Our power company is Excel Energy. We talked with Bob Moldy there, who is in charge of many things. One of the things he covers is the residential PV installations. Wonderful person, wonderful to work with. You obtain a form called the Distributed Generation Interconnection Agreement. Get a copy of that, study it, see what information you need on that thing. Get it right at this point in time because it'll help you thinking in terms of what you need to provide, information you need to provide in the future to get things approved. I put down here, fully positive interaction with power company representatives is absolutely critical. Don't act like a smarty pants or not like something that somebody says or disagree or try to argue over some point. Do not go there for any reason. One little thing like that and you're probably out of business before you start. These are wonderful people to work with. And remember that if you don't understand something, try and understand what they're saying because what they're saying absolutely rules. And it's probably your mistake or your misunderstanding, not theirs. Probably. And I would always approach it in that humble way. Remember that these people are so friendly, they'll stop at your house and look at what you're trying to do and say, give you tips just like that for free. So that's wonderful. At least this experience. What's that way? Go home and revise your initial planning because you've got new information. Okay, then you're ready to go to the city or the county. And we are in the city of Eau Claire, so we went down to the city and talked with the electrical and building inspectors down there about this project. These are wonderful people to work with. They're incredible professionals. They know exactly what they're talking about. If they tell you something needs to be a certain way, don't say, well, I don't think so. I think I would want to do it. They'll cut you short, and probably you've just lost your opportunity there once again because they do know what they're doing and they do know what they're talking about, and they'll be exceedingly helpful if you are good in communicating with people. So initial contact. You do this before you go too far because you do want to kind of test the waters, but you are not ready for a permit. Okay, positive, absolutely critical, positive relationships. Specific codes and requirements, site, architectural, and electrical. And if you don't understand what these are, you're probably going to have to, again, contact somebody who knows what they are and can explain them to you. Although the city inspectors are so wonderful, they're usually very good at explaining things in detail. Remember that homeowners can do the installation works, but they're going to watch you like a hawk because they want to make sure things are absolutely right. There's the last thing that the city wants is well, we let these people go ahead with this project and there was an electrical short and the house burned down. That does not look good. So, and they're going to be extremely careful to make sure that doesn't happen, which is good for you. Go home and revise your planning again. Okay, analyze your solar potential in detail. This you have to do. I brought in my very own Solar Pathfinder here, which I purchased new for this project. These things are quite pricey, but this is the least expensive one on the market. This is the industry standard. This is what they expect you to show your reports with one of these Solar Pathfinders. This is a simple little plastic thing with some software, which works beautifully, and you have to do it. Otherwise, you're looking at, this is with the software, it's $400 or $500. You can buy them on eBay at a little bit less than that for people who've done what I've done, and then they sell it on eBay to recoup their costs. You pay mostly what you pay for a new one if you buy them on eBay. They're very popular. You can also hire somebody who has one to come in and do the solar assessment for you. When I did this, we originally had a local business person come in who does this for a living and had an assessment, and there's a rebate from Focus on Energy at that time. I don't think that rebate is still going. And this actually shows me using Solar Pathfinder here in location. I used this before I put the panels up, and then I used it again after I had them up, more carefully and in more detail to do the report for Focus on Energy. Okay, again, revise and detail your initial plans. Now you're ready for some details, and you're ready to actually go back and contact the power company and the city again. Do this to the best of your ability or beyond. And I put down the or beyond because usually this is going to be something you haven't done before, and you really need to push the limits here. And then maybe get some advice on it if you need it. I have clear drawings for the site, where things are going to be located, exactly how they're going to fit in. Electrical and panel location, and how the equipment is going to be supported to racking. Then go back to your websites, your suppliers, and all the educational information. And look at specific costs, rebates and incentives and sources. And you start to write all this up and keep your notes on it clearly organized. Remember that all materials and equipment must have at least a 5-year warranty. The city will not approve anything with unwarranted equipment. You can't get rebates from Focus, whatever they are right now, without warranted equipment. And you have to have verification of that warranty in a specific kind of form from the company that supplies it. And also from your architect. Check with the supplier before purchase. These things have to be right. You don't just go out there and say, let's see, what kind of thing? I get some caulk here. This says it's a pretty good one. No, you have to know which caulk is correct for caulking the bolts and the mounts on the roof of the house. Because if you get the wrong one, it's going to leak and the whole thing's going to be down the drain. So you have to know what's correct. You have to have no construction things. Okay, this mono caulk is the right kind of caulk to use here. Multiple plans at this point. This is a little one-line electrical drawing. I'm sorry, it's kind of small here. I think I've got a bigger version of it coming up. The city requires this, so you need to have this drawing.
Steve, do you want to just briefly mention what your background is, what you did for a living? You know, because you know it kind of is helpful for people to know.
Oh, yeah, I'm the former chair of the art and design at UWEC. That's what I spent the majority of my life doing professionally, but I grew up on a farm, as I said before, and when you grow up on a farm, you do everything. So, I mean, to not do something like this would be, well, why would you consider not doing it? You know, you just do it, just like us on the farm. So, I mean, I've got a background in terms of building and constructing things, renovating houses. A lot of this I didn't know how to do to begin with, and I said, well, that doesn't make any difference, and I just figure it out and do it. You know, it's just sort of the way I am. So from that little diagram I showed you in there, I did this, which is not required, but was immensely helpful in going to the city and going to Excel to explain what I was doing and prove that I knew what I was doing and exactly how it should be set up. It was also my main document for communicating with the city inspector, Mark Steffen, about the electrical needs. And he could say, okay, no, not this, but this. This needs to go here, not here. And he was very impressed with this, and it was, I mean, within a few seconds almost, or a minute, we had it all figured out. And the grounding was something he was particularly concerned with. Everything was okay on my initial diagram of this type, except he had a couple of things that he needed changed on the grounding, which is the green line down here. And so I just made the changes and brought it back, and I said, does this look right, Mark? He says, yeah, that's right. Go ahead. And he's so good to work with. He said, anytime you got a question, just give me a call. Help you out with it. Once we got started, he said, anytime you have a question while you're putting this in, just give me a call. Come out and take a look at it and see. I'll help you out. Okay, qualified architect, draw up detailed plans for your project. This is also really important. This is where my cousin Scott came in. You cannot do this yourself. The city will not approve the project and you will not go forward. I doubt that the county would either, and I haven't dealt with the county, but I talked to some people who have, and similar kind of a thing. You have to have an architect look at it and verify that indeed those bolts are the correct bolts, the correct size, installed in the correct way, and the correct type of lumber, and technically, in engineering terms, that bolt and that lumber will provide this level of support on that racking system mounted in that position in this part of the world, you know, where the wind and snow loads will be this. And an architect can do that, my cousin can do that just like that, just off the top of his head. He can write all those specs right out. And that's what he did. And you hire them and you pay them their rate. My cousin Scott works for, he doesn't get paid enough. He doesn't charge enough. He charged me less, I'm sure, than he would, you know, like a Honda Motor Company if he's rebuilding one of their sales rooms or something like that. But take your plans to a qualified architect, and it's structural, electrical, and solar experienced. So again, my cousin Scott is travels to Haiti, actually, and he's installed in Haiti's finest private school, he's installed their independent, designed and helped install their independent solar PV electrical system, which keeps their school running independently of the regular electrical system in Haiti, which fails all the time. The lights are always on at that school. And that's not a grid-tied system. That one is off-grid, to say the least. Several estimates of possible or practical. Finalize with the architect a final plan with the notes. So it'll provide you with this finalized certified drawings and at least a 5-year system design warranty. And you get that from the architect with a signature. Yes, I warranty this design as a system for at least 5 years. And you must have that warranty from the architect for most rebate programs. Okay, second, contact with the power company. You talk directly with the representative. You have your DGA or DGIA, the Distributed General Interconnection Agreement with initial information on it. It won't be signed until the final inspection. Site visit with this representative and with plans in hand. So you've got that, and I'm just going to go back quickly here. This with you and all other drawings, architectural approved drawings, those sorts of things, to show to Bob Molte in this case. Obtain permit if required from the electric company. And this is a second contact now. Kind of sounds like some sort of a classical story here. Second contact with city and county inspector. Show up fully prepared at this point because now the show is on. Okay, and there are all the things you need. Fully worked up price estimates. The city will need to know how much you expect this is going to cost. Also, let the city and the power company know that you've been talking and contact numbers between the two in case they need to check in. Does this person really know what they're doing? Did you think this is okay? You know, they're going to talk behind your back maybe, which is good, in this case, have your city inspector come out and look at where you're going to put this thing in and go around and point how your plans in hand fit the site, and they'll usually be very agreeable to doing that. Now you can obtain your building permits for the building, structural, and electric. You need both of those. And that's going to cost you a few dollars. But don't do that, try and do that ahead of time because it'll kind of sabotage your project. You might end up paying more than once, or paying and then not being able to continue with your project and the money's all down the drain. So now you're ready to order materials, and don't do that before you have those permits, everything approved, because it's a final plan. You can't change that plan. You're now committed to it. The city won't stand for you changing, the electrical company will not allow you to change it, and for very good reasons. If you do run into a design problem along the way, certainly talk to them because they're going to be very reasonable about that. You know, there might be some reason you needed to change something, but make sure that they're aware of it and they okay it. Star ratings and suppliers, particularly if you go online. I don't have any trouble myself with buying stuff online because I've done it for a bazillion years. But I'm very particular about reading those star reports. I would never go with a supplier that's less than 4.5 or 5 stars. If it's 4 stars, I consider the supplier unreliable. So that's just kind of where I am in that. 4.5 to 5 is where I look. Remember shipping costs and times, make sure you check with them on that. We got a whopping big discount for a cashier's check with a place that we bought the stuff that more than paid for our shipping of all that stuff from Northern California. We picked up a really great tip from that supplier too about current equipment that was available, generally is not described anywhere else, and you have to keep up on that because you know, suddenly, well, Enphase comes out with a certain kind of inverter, which may cost, a microinverter, which may provides some advantages over a single inverter design. Solar Edge is what we went with, is another type of a system which uses power boxes. They're not inverters, it's a single inverter system, but it's got the little power boxes on each panel, and that offers some really significant advantages over older designs. And so we did go with the Solar Edge, and we've, for the most part, been pretty happy with that. There's a new kind of panel out now. It's the panel itself, the electrical PV panel itself, individually are built with the inverters in the panels. So you basically plug them together and they output 110 volt electricity. And that is way cool. I don't know the costs in those yet because they're just coming on market. Okay, do not modify plans. I think I said that already. Yes, any changes? Schedule reliable people. Don't say, oh, my neighbor said he'd help, and then, well, it just didn't show up, or I couldn't get up that early, or I decided to take a vacation, you know. These are people you really know, and they've made a commitment, and they're going to be there. And this one, safety is paramount in elevated locations. I can't emphasize that too strongly because it's very common for people to fall off of buildings and be severely injured. You get up there, the roof is at a slope, you get a little vertigo, and the next thing down you go, and can be a long ways. And that said, well, I can't remember. I think I've got a picture here in a minute that'll show you how my cousin and I had all our safety concerns foremost at our minds. And it's a problem with farm kids because they don't think of those sorts of things too often. So I didn't say that. But yeah, don't necessarily go by some of the pictures at our house that are demonstrating how we install these things because we don't have the nice safety harnesses on and all those sorts of things in my other pictures. But safety harnesses, yes, make sure you don't fall off the roof, or a ladder doesn't collapse, or scaffolding doesn't break, or something like that. Okay, work with these folks for advice, said that already. Remember that the inspectors want your project to succeed, especially if you've gotten to this point. They want it to succeed. They don't want it to be, go wrong somehow and have a problem or just not be finished. They've already made a commitment. You've got a building permit. They've looked at your plans. They really want you to succeed, and they're really going to be very helpful. Architect's visit as your project proceeds, as you can afford that, depending on who your architect is. And know when to ask for directions when you really don't know what you're doing. This is our inverter, which is installed in the garden shed. This is the structural members which were added in our upper row of panels, which were needed. And these are all things that I designed and knew needed to be that way, and they needed to be where they were. Basically, the entire design of the system was not modified, with one exception in any way, by my cousin when he looked at my plans. He just looked at them, wrote down the specifications, technical specifications for everything I put in there, and then said, this is right. And that's essential. Be 100% finished when you bring for the final inspection and approval. Don't forget the signs. I just went on again online and found a company that produces these signs. I asked the inspectors what the signs needed to say, what size, and et cetera, and they said, I don't know. So I made these up, and okay, notice AC disconnect entire PV system. This is the main disconnect for the system. And I put those up, and they said, very nice. So I imagine maybe this is a local example now. And I think they probably snapped a few little pictures of those and said, yeah, okay, next person that puts these in, you have to have signs that look like this. Because it provided them with something too, and they were very impressed. They said, yeah, no question about it. They walked out, the inspectors walked out, looked at the system. It was kind of fun that when the Excel came out, I had everything ready to go, and looked around and he said, well, you haven't turned it on yet? He said, well, turn it on. And so I went over and flipped the switch and turned it on, started generating electricity, and he says, looks good. And he had an intern with him, took him around, showed him all these things. This is the way these things have to be, just like this, and like this, and like this, and like this. And I said, well, what else? I said, see ya. And that was the last time I talked to him. And then the city inspectors came and looked through it very carefully, walked around, checked everything, that had done everything that he had. They make very detailed lists, or that's in their minds, because he checked every little thing that he'd said anything about in all of our discussions, checked them all those things. He said, looks good. See ya. And that was the end of the story. Your system should be worry-free, require no maintenance. Snow blocking may have some effect. Careful snow rake or wait for the sun to take things off of there. Dust, pollen, and bird poop can have an effect. Those crows are not great in your panels, but it usually washes off. The thing they discovered is that when it rains, if it ever rains, that stuff pretty much washes off. They seem to like shed this stuff in the rain very quickly and easily. You can use a hose and scrub things down, and again, just wait for rain. In the winter, I got a snow rake with little nylon feet in the bottom, so there wasn't a hazardous breaking glass in the panel, and we'll rake the snow off on occasion, but eventually the snow will just take the stuff right, the sun will take the snow right off the panels. We had one little problem spot because of the unique design of our house and our system where we had a little bit of trouble. I'll get to a better picture, I'll point that out again. But these were our decisions kind of right down the line there. Grid tied, we're extremely interested in making a community choice here that really helps out the whole community, the planet, et cetera. We didn't want to go off-grid. We're not survivalists. We're exactly the opposite, very forward-thinking, very community-oriented, and I think on our lifestyles. We wanted to eliminate the gas furnace and gas water heater, which burn fossil fuels. So cut down on CO2 emissions, work to alleviate climate change problems. Payback, well, yeah, right now it's, we're break even on this. We're not really, it's not for making money or sort of eliminating the power companies' bills, those sorts of things. It wasn't really our goal. Right now, I'd say this project will break even, in 15 to 20 years. But as the price of electricity goes up, or if it goes up, and I expect it will go up significantly, probably up quite a ways, this will pay back much more quickly. So it's kind of in a future investment. These other things we've talked about. I had to put the panels in several locations. I think I've got a good picture of that coming up here. We had to modify the commercial racking system. This is something my cousin and I discovered actually as we were starting to put the panels into place. The commercial racking system we bought from Iron Ridge actually had a very serious engineering flaw in its design, and he discovered it. We discovered it one day as we were starting to figure, okay, this is not going to work. And so we added some bracing to that, which made it work quite well. And he could, within a few minutes, he'd pull out a CAD program, re-engineered the racking system, put some additional braces in it. We ran out late one night to Menards and a couple of other local places that sold aluminum tubing and angle metal, and had it all measured out and drilled out in the shop. And the next day, started putting it in. Works perfectly. We use Solar Edge controllers and inverters. This is a system that takes the solar panel. It adds this little thing called a power box. So each panel is its own electrical generator rather than all the panels working together as one unified unit. And this means if you've got a shadow on one panel at one point and that's cutting the power distribution from that one panel, the rest of them are unaffected. So this thing responds dynamically to changing shading, which is, I would say, is absolutely essential in the designing system. You got to use InPhase or Solar Edge or a company like that. I think the new panels with the built-in inverters really look wonderful if they're not too expensive. It really boosts your energy production. And our installation, these are our number one panels, these 8, because they're on the garden shed, clear south facing, clearest possible exposure. And we've got others which have shading during parts of the day. Let's see. My brother in California, when he saw that we'd done this, very quickly put in his own solar installation out in California. We make, on the very best month, we make about 600 kilowatts in a month. And this is a 6 kilowatt kW system. His system is only a 4.2 kilowatt system. On the average month, they make 800 kilowatts. So that's California, and this is Wisconsin. Yeah. It's the sun. But ours is okay. Keep all your receipts, copy all forms, so you have your own copies of everything. Write a project narrative, which looks just like this, to impress people, so when they see what you're doing, okay, here's your project narrative, explains the whole thing, usually on one page or page and a half. because that's usually as much as people want to read. So edit that down, have it well written, perfectly understandable, and in a logical order of progression. You're going to need to compile this complete document. Our document, by the time we had all the SolarEdge printouts from the software and all of that, was, I'm trying to remember, somewhere around 70 pages, I think, long. The initial part and these forms are all here minus the SolarEdge, the Solar Pathfinder generated report, which was most of the report. I use Quicken for cost summaries. I'll have that up here in just a second. So how much did it cost? Here you go. This system would cost less if we put it in today because the cost of the equipment has come down. It already come down dramatically. One of the reasons we decided to do this is there'd been an incredible reduction in the cost of the equipment itself at that point in time. Focus on Energy had a rebate which ended December 31st. Our plan was sent to Focus on December 27th. We thought we'd sit on that for a while before it was approved. Almost immediately I got my check back from Focus. No questions. I think the documentation was so complete and well presented that they just had no questions on it. They just sent us a check. So this is all the equipment. This is what I had to pay my cousin for his architectural services and a couple of weeks of labor. But hey, this is a fun project for a couple of family people. So the total cost was this. This is the Focus on Energy rebate. It wasn't the full 30% because we had some modifications with shading and angles of panels. So I reduced that. The Focus on Energy form gave no information on how to calculate those reductions. So I just made it up. I said, well, this row is, has a 92% rating, so that gets the full rebate. And this, that was for the 8 panels on the garden shed. This one only has a 72%, so that's going to be this. And so I calculated for each group of panels in each location. There was no indication of how to do that or should I do it on the form or anything. So I just made it up, fill it all in, sent it in, and they said, wonderful. So after the Focus rebate, we were here. Then there's a federal rebate, which is 30% of this, which came to this. So after the Focus, after the both rebates, this is the cost of our 6 kW system. Or you could say, right around $2,000 for a kilowatt generation. And today I would say that we'd probably be a ways lower than that. This is one of the variables here. We got more than an incredible bargain on that right there. And how much electricity does it produce? Between 300 and 600 kilowatts in a month, or about 6,000 kilowatts in a year. 6,000 plus is what we were running last year. And we're still compiling, of course, from this year. It provides about 2/3 of the electricity we use because we have a geothermal heating and cooling system in the house. And that's the big consumption of energy. If we didn't have that system, we'd be overproducing, way overproducing the electricity that we need at our home. So 6 kW would have been more than we needed. 4 would, I think, have done our electrical needs very well. So on a very good high season day, like a really sunny summer day, it's in July, our system produces as much energy as you find in 1 gallon of gasoline. So a real nice comparison too. And that brings me to the disclaimer. And this is necessary because, I'm not encouraging anybody to do this. I'm not giving you any advice on this. I'm just saying what we did and how it worked.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.